So guys, let me tell you the story of Stanley. He is a man who is incredibly lucky, so lucky that he can kill anyone with a single hit, and all the evidence against him just disappears on its own. But there is one specific man that this lucky power doesn't work on, and he is out to kill Stanley. You'll find out more about that later. When Stanley wakes up later, he is in his room. He remembers someone brought him home, but he finds a brick, his hammer, and a letter telling him to get on Telegram. Those two kids are now dead. Christopher sees a post online saying the blind girl, Minamoto, lost her sight in a blast while partying. Later, she killed her own parents with gas and a knife for insurance money. Christopher and Greg meet the girl who wrote the post. She is Minamoto's cousin and says the girl once threw boiling water on her. On the other side, Detective Park is okay and says he is moving to the USA soon. Christopher goes to the house of the two boys who stabbed the detective, but their mother slaps him and tells him to find who killed her sons. Greg says she's just sad, but Christopher tells a story about how those two boys did something terrible to a girl who then took her own life. The mother had blamed the girl back then. The boys were let go because they were minors. Christopher goes to Stanley's shop, and the owner says he saw the blind girl there a few days ago. He says Stanley took an advance and disappeared. The CCTV only has a 5-day backup, so the girl isn't on the tapes. Christopher looks up Stanley and sees a fraud case because he took the boss's money, but otherwise, his record is clean. Stanley is talking to someone on Telegram who seems to know everything about him. A fraud notice arrives at his house. Stanley calls the police to surrender, but the cop thinks he's talking about the money and tells him to come in at 9 p.m. Elsewhere, Greg goes to see a man named Kazuko, whose daughter was hurt by those two boys. Kazuko says those boys destroyed his daughter's life, so he killed them. Greg tells Christopher that Kazuko confessed. Kazuko says he used a brick to kill them while they were drunk. But Christopher notices the killer was right-handed and Kazuko is left-handed. He realizes Kazuko is covering for someone. But the police close the case and tell Christopher to stop. As Kazuko is leaving, the mother of the two boys hits him with her car. Kazuko remembers that he wanted to kill the boys, but was too scared to do it. At the hospital, Christopher says sorry and tells Kazuko he shouldn't take the blame for someone else. Kazuko keeps saying he did it. Meanwhile, Stanley puts all his money in his mom's account. As he leaves, a biker steals his bag, and Stanley gets hurt and ends up in the same hospital. The bikers throw away the hammer and brick. In the hospital, Kazuko sees Stanley and tells him the police are there and he should run. Stanley asks if he was the one on Telegram. Kazuko says yes, but tells him to go. Kazuko remembers watching Stanley fight the boys. Stanley had knocked them out with a brick and then passed out himself. Kazuko feels his work is done, takes a lot of sleeping pills, and collapses. Christopher sees Stanley leaving the hospital, but has to go to Kazuko when he hears he's in critical condition. It turns out 2 people had brought Stanley home that night, and the second man told Kazuko that the boy did what Kazuko couldn't, so Kazuko should take the blame. 5 months pass. A drunk man leaves a party and gets into a car. His driver has Hiroise written on his jacket. This is the same thing written on the person who talked to Kazuko. The driver takes a wrong turn, and the worker gets a call from his real driver saying he's still waiting. An electric shock sound happens, and the worker is found dead in a pond the next day. It's Detective Park's last day. We learn that in 5 months, many murders happened, but none were solved. A profiler named Susan arrives and tells the team they aren't doing their jobs. Christopher says he knows who is doing it, but has no proof. We see a guy named Xerox live streaming, saying the police are bad at their jobs. Christopher shows up and asks Xerox if he thinks a serial killer is at work. Xerox says most deaths were random, but one involved 4 stabs, meaning it was planned. Christopher accuses him of hacking their system. Xerox is arrested, but another cop, Brad, thinks they are making a mistake because Xerox can just find everything online. Christopher is sure Xerox knows something. He takes Xerox home and asks if he's still doing his old crimes. Xerox says he's an adult now. Christopher goes to Stanley's shop and sees the blind girl's dog, which is back at her old house. Stanley is seen taking Tofu to Xerox's house. Brad and Greg chase after Stanley on scooters but get confused and catch the wrong person. Christopher starts hitting Xerox, accusing him of telling Stanley who to kill. Xerox acts like he knows nothing. Christopher realizes they caught the wrong guy and then sees a hidden camera. Everything he did was being live streamed. Christopher gets arrested for hitting Xerox and Stanley gets away. We see a letter Stanley left saying he's going to find his purpose. He tells people he's in Canada, but he's actually working with the person on Telegram. On a train, Xerox tells Stanley he was the one talking to him. Xerox shows Stanley his own records and says he's been looking for him. He says every person Stanley killed was a criminal, and the evidence disappearing must be a superpower. Stanley says he'll stop killing, but Xerox offers him 50 million rupees to keep killing bad people. Stanley agrees. Xerox reveals he had two partners before, Kazuko and someone else Stanley shouldn't meet. Stanley finds a secret room at Xerox's place full of weapons and money. He goes out and bumps into a man, getting that strange feeling again. The man thinks Stanley is his driver. Stanley shocks him and ties him up. The man begs for his life, but Xerox hacks his phone and shows he was blackmailing people with private photos. Stanley kills him and feels he finally has a reason to live. In the present, Stanley is training at a gym. Christopher gets suspended for hitting a child. Nestor is also suspended. A girl named Taylor moves to Seoul after a video of her goes viral. Stanley is also in Seoul with a fake ID from Xerox. Stanley is working at a grocery store cutting fish. Taylor works there too and is very unhappy. Stanley defends Taylor from a woman trying to get a fake refund. Taylor sees this. Later, Taylor and Stanley have a talk about how they both have no dreams and hate rude customers. Taylor meets a guy named Jason who was her student. They start spending time together. Stanley wants to kill Jason but isn't sure. It turns out Jason is getting married to a girl named Monica, but he's lying to Taylor. Taylor finds out and threatens to tell his fiancée. Jason kills Taylor. The next day, Jason finds out he has an STD from his fiancée. News says Taylor died in a fire. Christopher tells the police to investigate Stanley. A witness says she heard a fight at Taylor's house. A man named Hector is following Stanley. Christopher almost catches Stanley, but Hector trips him and says they need to talk. Stanley can tell Hector has killed many people. Hector finds Jason and beats him until he confesses to killing Taylor. Hector is waiting for Stanley to show up to kill Jason so he can catch him. Jason dies, and Hector complains that people aren't smart enough these days. Christopher goes to Stanley's hotel room but finds it covered in fire extinguisher foam. It turns out another boy used the extinguisher to get revenge on Stanley for a small argument, accidentally destroying all the evidence. Greg sees the person who blew up a room, who is Hector, and is then attacked by him. Christopher's father is dying, and his mom wants to stop the treatment. Xerox goes to his room and finds Hector there. Hector was Xerox's old partner. Hector wants to meet Stanley. Xerox tries to hit him, but Hector wins. Later, Hector beats Greg and throws him off a building. Xerox tells Christopher that Hector is the one who hurt his father and offers to help catch him. Christopher refuses. Hector kills a spoiled rich kid and says he's doing the parents a favor. Stanley is on a train and sees a girl arguing, but he's not in the mood to kill. He plays games and feels the urge to kill a man, but lets him go. That man is caught for a crime anyway. A man named Magnus tells Christopher they can get promoted if they catch Hector because he killed a rich man's daughter. Xerox offers to help the rich man's group. Stanley meets Hector, who wants to be partners. Stanley tries to kill Hector, but Hector is too fast. Xerox and the rich man's group arrive. They tie up Xerox and the rich man's group arrive. They tie up Xerox, but Stanley frees him. Hector kills several people with their own knives and then shoots one with a real gun. The police surround the place. Christopher adopts the blind girl's dog. He visits Greg. He remembers his father was a bad person and wants to be a good cop to prove a point. He sees CCTV of Stanley and Hector. Hector is hiding in an area with no cameras. Hector finds the rich chairman who had committed crimes against girls and caused a building to collapse. Hector is about to kill him when Christopher arrives. Hector tells Christopher he knew his father. Hector kills the chairman anyway and is arrested. But Hector escapes from the police van by tricking them about his handcuffs. Xerox and Stanley plan to go to Southeast Asia. Xerox says he wanted to fix the justice system because the police didn't help his family. Stanley goes to see his mom but can't. He sees the news that he and Xerox are wanted, and his mom faints. Xerox says they have to leave by boat. Christopher's mother ends his father's life support. Hector finds Xerox's number from a dentist and tells him to meet at a factory. Xerox tries to let Stanley escape, but Stanley follows him. Hector kills Christopher's father in the hospital. Christopher finds Xerox, and they go to find Hector. Xerox takes all the blame to protect Stanley. They find Hector. A gunfight happens. Hector shoots Xerox, and Christopher shoots Hector. Before he dies, Hector tells Christopher that his mother was having an affair with his boss, Nestor. We find out Hector was a good cop who was treated badly because his father was a criminal. He had found out Christopher's father was dirty and involved in drugs. Hector had beaten him up years ago. Hector tries to kill Stanley, but Christopher shoots him dead. Christopher's father has a funeral. Christopher adopts the dog. The news says Xerox and Hector were the killers. They find a bite mark on an apple that matches Xerox's teeth because the dentist made them look like Stanley's. Stanley is shown living in another country. He meets Detective Park, who is now a regular guy and ignores him. Stanley gets in trouble for not having a passport, but since he has no record, they let him go. He sees a man and gets that killing feeling again. Christopher is walking his dog and sees news of another criminal being killed with no evidence. It looks like Stanley is back at it, and that is the end of the story.